Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the 1976 film Carrie. Yes, the original Carrie based off the Stephen King novel done by Brian De Palma, well, directed by Brian De Palma. And actually, yeah, this is my first time having seen this film. It's one of those films that's been on my list for quite a long time to get to, but it's one that I never like hurried up to get to just because I was like, I've heard about it so many times. I already know how it ends. And it kind of seemed to me that it could end up being one of those films that just kind of overhyped. But after watching it, I mean, it's a masterpiece. It is definitely a masterpiece, especially when you consider the time frame that it's made. Because once again, this is 1976. So for the style of the film, how well the story's done, how tight that film is, and the script and everything, it's a masterpiece. I mean, it really is. I know a lot of people have a tendency to kind of watch it for the first time nowadays and not keep in context or keep in their mind the context of what filmmaking was like at that point. Sure, there were other films that were as good or potentially a bit better than Carrie, but for its time, pretty outstanding. Anyway, like I said, it's directed by Brian De Palma, who also did Phantom of the Paradise, which is a great film. I have a review for it on my channel. Dressed to Kill, which I will be watching soon and doing a review for on my channel. Actually, may even do it so that I can release it the day after releasing this one. So watch for that. Blowout, Scarface, Body Double, and The Black Dahlia. That's just a few films to name. Also did like Carlito's Way, which I love. He's done a lot of great films. The script was written by Lawrence D. Cohen, who has written Ghost Story, a few episodes of the original It TV show, Tommyknockers episodes as well. So he's adapted some other Stephen King stuff, obviously based off the Stephen King book. The ending apparently is different than what the ending is in Stephen King's book. I've not read the book. At some point, I probably would like to, based off this film. But it is actually reported that Stephen King liked the ending in the film better than the ending he had in his book, which is a lot. Like that says a lot because, famously so, he's been very, very critical of Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining, saying that it deviated so much from the book. So having a deviation from the book in this instance and it being praised by King, that's a big deal in my opinion. So that, hats off to, I believe, Lawrence D. Cohen. I assume he's the one who made that change. Excuse me. So apparently King was only paid $2,500 for the rights to his book Carrie to be made into the film. But it's a paltry sum, especially considering who King is. But it wasn't who he was back then. He wasn't very recognized. So the fact that he got paid a little bit didn't matter to him all that much, especially not even in the long run. He doesn't feel, cheated or anything nowadays that he got such a small amount because that's what got things rolling for his career, really. After Carrie was made and people loved the film so much, and more specifically the story being told, his name blew up. He became more recognized, and that's what made it possible for him to go on and sell more books, well, have more books optioned for scripts. So yeah, it's a big deal. Piper Laurie, who played Carrie's mother in this, apparently viewed her character as being very, very over the top. She played it that way intentionally, and she even has told people for a long time that she believes the film is a black comedy, that it's not a serious film, that it's played very much as a black comedy, especially because she felt like her performance on the screen is very laughable. And I could see that, but within the context of how the film was edited, how the music was done, how it was shot, the way that Carrie, Sissy Spacek's character, Carrie, interacts with her mother, I think all of those things really kind of flipped it around and took it from being kind of crazy and over the top and making it seem just more realistic and scary, to be honest. I mean, just think about watching scenes of just Carrie's mother in this. Yeah, you could see that it's over the top and just a bit too much, but when she's interacting with Sissy Spacek, it's very different. It changes the context of it extremely. Which, by the way, Sissy Spacek's performance in this is nothing short of amazing. She hits a crazy range of emotions. She does it so well. Her delivery is so good. Her facial acting is so amazing, especially with the part at the end when it's her eyes. It's all about her eyes at the end. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. To stay in character, apparently Sissy Spacek did isolate herself when she wasn't shooting, well, actually on the set shooting. She wanted to feel ostracized. She wanted to feel isolated like her character is in this film. And so she was going very method with it. So apparently she really kind of sequestered herself and didn't really interact with anyone, which is smart. Now, that's all like the kind of like backstory and behind the scenes stuff that I have. I just wanted to pick out a few things because, as you can imagine, with this being such a highly lauded film and it's from the 70s, there's a lot of information about it online. So I didn't want to overdo it. But no, if you want to dive even deeper, that information is there for you. You can certainly do that. So, the opening volleyball game establishes how picked on and ostracized Carrie is. That's really important because it lets you know who she is initially without you even knowing her as a person. And then obviously over time you start to, kind of be let inside to see who Carrie is as a person, and she's a very nice person. She's being abused at school and she's being abused at home, so you feel bad for her. But she's very innocent. She has this real innocence, especially the fact that she doesn't even know what menstruation is when it starts with her. I mean, that is like and the nth degree of innocence, really. Although some could, well, some would argue, including myself, that it's terrible that she didn't know what was happening to her, not only because it put her in distress, but also because, that's something a woman should know or a girl should know about what's to come in her life. And it's kind of another form of abuse almost from her mother, just keeping that knowledge from her. But we learn why that is going on, and I'll talk about that in a bit. The shower scene does seem like a bit much. Now, the impact of the menstrual blood is very important, but the scene really doesn't need to be as long as it is, and it doesn't need to have as sensual of a air to it, in my opinion. I feel like that kind of distracts from it in a sense. Now, not everyone will feel that way about it. This is just my personal feeling on it. But it's too long. It's too much from a sensual viewpoint. Um, that's just my opinion. But the scene itself is impactful when it comes to the actual menstruation because obviously that's what kicks everything off. And obviously this film is a large part about, dealing with becoming a woman, dealing with womanhood, going through changes, going through, being one person and becoming a totally different person. But it's hyperbolic, it's very over the top about it, which, horror films do that a lot. Carrie's schoolmates take a traumatic experience for Carrie and make it even more so, and that's obviously the point. Once again, like I was saying, going very over the top. I'm not so sure that it's realistic that kids would act that way. I mean, they may make fun of her and they may point and laugh and stuff, but it was very over the top for them to be like throwing pads and tampons at her and stuff like that, especially because it seems like they were pretty aware of what was going on, even though she was not. She actually felt like she was dying. So I feel like they would have made fun of that aspect of it where she didn't know what was going on, but it was over the top. But it's for the purpose of the story. It's to kind of blow things out of proportion and show how tormented she is at school. You see how uncomfortable the principal gets dealing with the subject of her menstruation. He literally, like, he sees the blood on Miss Collins' shorts, and he like is like cowering almost from it, which goes back to how periods and menstruation have really been dealt with over time. I feel like it's gotten a bit different over the last probably decade ish, but we still have a long way to go where you should be able to talk about it. It should be able to be something that women are open about if they want to talk about that. Instead, the way it's been and the way it was when this film came out is very much like men are just like, "Ooh, I don't want to hear about that. That's uncomfortable." Well, why is that the case? Most likely because where this is coming from is a point of sexual pleasure for men, and they don't want to think of where they go for pleasure as bleeding. They don't want to think about it that way. They think it's icky, they think it's gross, and it ruins the fantasy. So that I'm not saying that's what's going on with the principal here. I'm just kind of going further, extrapolating upon that as more of a societal commentary. The initial introduction of Carrie's mother shows how religious and how overbearing she is. She basically barges into Mrs. Smith's house. Not only that, but then judges her because she's not willing to like accept, Jesus into her life or whatever she's trying to get her to do, but instead just kind of like giving her a donation as a way to just be like, just leave, basically. And she gets mad and she judges her and she's just like, I hope you find Jesus. So yeah, so that's a good introduction for Carrie's mother because it really sets her character up for how religious she is and how judgmental she is, and how if people aren't in line with her feelings and what she wants, you're discounted, and that's obviously what's going on with Carrie. But it's even deeper and worse than that. They start very early with small displays of Carrie's powers, and it does help drive home that she's not in control of them. So all the small displays that are very, very early, like lights breaking and things like that, are just that small manifestation of her anger growing or her distress growing and leaving her body. The telekinesis is about the rage and the anger that she has inside of her, and its actual manifestation in leaving her body in one way or another. It literally, like what's going on with the telekinesis, it's literally the personification of her negative feelings, of all that balled up aggression that's been thrown at her, basically, and it's reflected outward in these moments, and she can't really control it. Now obviously she controls it at the end of the film, but that's because she's become basically a different person. She has that moment that just flicks the switch, in a sense, where she's now able to control her telekinesis. During the scene of the girls exercising at the direction of the gym teacher, note that as the girls slow down in their exercising, so does the music. That's one of these really small, kind of smart things that's done in the film that a lot of times you don't pick up on these things, but in this case, it really did stand out to me. It's cool. Like, not only are they slowing down as they're exercising, but the music is slowing down with them to enhance the feeling of the exhaustion that they're experiencing. And that's great filmmaking. They show how bad Chris is when she gets banned from the prom, and the other girls basically knew when to quit. It really is established at that moment that the ringleader of everything is Chris, played by Nancy Allen, who does a great job. But then other people like, whoops, wrong way. Everything's reversed here. PJ Souls up there from Carrie, people like her are kind of just following along. And when there are any, real repercussions that could happen, they back off, but not Chris. Chris gets even more angry. She gets even more headstrong, and she wants to go further. She wants to be worse. So that was a defining moment where you see, this is the type of person Chris is. As a viewer, you just feel awful watching Tommy ask Carrie to the prom because you know how badly everything will probably end up going for her, especially at that point, because you fear that Chris and Sue are basically tied into Tommy and Sue are basically tied into Chris's master plot. Even though they're not seen like fraternizing with each other, you just assume that because they were friends in the beginning that they're working together on this. Obviously, you find out towards the end in a very heartbreaking way that that wasn't the case, and that actually Tommy is having a good time with her at the prom, and Tommy, does come around and want to be nice to her, and that was Sue's intention as well. So, but at that point, like, you feel terrible because you know it's going in the wrong direction, and you think that Tommy and Sue's intentions are bad. And you feel even worse when you see her getting things together for the prom, because it's all coming to a bad situation. Even if you're not 100% sure about Tommy and Sue's intentions, you are 100% sure about what Chris is up to, her master plan, because you're seeing all the story developing with that, like them showing you all the steps of her getting this pig's blood and getting it set up and everything. The master plan is at work. I like how Tommy can't even hold up the ruse when he and Sue are being questioned by Miss Collins. He does kind of have this like I don't know how to answer. It seems suspicious, and I think the reason it's done that way, the reason it's acted that way, is because it's supposed to string you along further to think that Tommy doesn't have good intentions and that Sue also doesn't have good intentions, because it makes the impact of the ending way better when there's that reveal that Sue actually doesn't want this terrible thing to happen, and Tommy didn't know about it either, and he actually was being nice to her. She actually had friends at that point that she was totally unaware of. Especially during the dinner table scene, you get the idea Carrie's mother is projecting a lot onto her. Then you hear Carrie say her father left with another woman, and it all makes sense at that point. Then there's another degree added to it at the very end of the film, but I will talk about that once I get to that. But you do start to see pretty early on the projection. Like, you get the idea that it's not about anything Carrie's ever done, it's about the insecurities and the past of her mother. And so she's placing so much on her. And that happens with parents. You know, they do project that type of stuff. Actually, it just happens with people in general. They project issues onto people all the time. I like the scene with Freddie trying to talk his way into having access to the prom ballot box. That actually really made me laugh. I was very much like, I'd like to volunteer. And the guy's like, we got everyone. And he's like, no, I'll volunteer. And he's just like, what time? And they're like, I think they're like 6 o'clock. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. What about 8? 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock's good. Like, he just like forces himself through that door, basically, metaphorically speaking. Pretty funny. The camera spinning around Carrie and Tommy while they're dancing at the prom in an opposite direction as they're spinning actually really has this dizzying feeling as an audience member. And I think that's really cool because it kind of represents the mental state of Carrie at that point. Like, she's so intoxicated and there's this dizzying feeling for her because of the euphoria she's experienced. She's never had anything this wonderful tied into her life that connects to her school or even her home life for that matter, because she's been, growing up under the terrible abuse of her mother this whole time. So this nice moment of reprieve from her life where she feels like people care about her, she's able to have a fun time. She's able to actually mingle with her schoolmates. It's this euphoric, dizzying feeling, and I think that camera work, that motion around her and Tommy, really helps to increase that feeling for the audience. Tommy says, "To the devil with false modesty." And then it goes to Carrie's mother. It shows Carrie is following what her mother would consider the devil's path. That's one of those kind of winks that the director gives you of this line of dialogue, and then boom, it goes over to the mother, and it's like, yep, this is exactly what she was fearing, that this is the path Carrie's going down. Great camera work. The weaves through the gym to show the unfolding plot against Carrie. That's awesome. How the camera just keeps moving through the gymnasium during the prom scene and showing everything being set up, all the plans in motion as we're getting to the actual plot unfolding with the prank on her with the pig's blood. Really well done. Looks really, really good. And it's more engaging from an audience standpoint. You just feel awful knowing what's coming, and it's enhanced with how they oscillate between Carrie's happiness and the impending execution of the prank. Music also plays a really big part in it, just feeling like the dread and this terrible stuff coming. And it's oscillating between this beautiful light music that's showing the mental state of Carrie at that point being so happy and being so euphoric at that point, and then going to this really troubling music saying, here comes the bad stuff, and it's about to go horribly wrong. It's a good twist when you realize Sue and Tommy were actually being nice, because you just assumed that they were in on the prank. So I really love that little twist to it. Didn't see it coming, actually. When the switch goes off in Carrie's mind, her eyes say everything. This goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the review, that once she's drenched in blood and the anger takes over and you know something's going to happen because of the telekinesis situation that was laid out numerous times prior in the film, when her eyes get huge and she just, it's kind of like her head's back and she's just that is a scary moment. You see it in her eyes, the rage, and it's about to come out, and it comes out in the form of this vengeful telekinesis that kills people. I mean, she's unhinged at that point. She just breaks. It's hard to know if Carrie is more enraged by the prank itself or the fact that her mother was right. She spent all this time telling her mother, no, everything's going to be fine. Her mother kept saying, they're all going to laugh at you. They're all going to laugh at you. The prank happens and people are laughing at her. And like I said, it's hard to figure out. Is she more upset about the actual prank happening and the blood on her, or the fact that it proved her mother right in her mind? They did laugh at her. It wasn't what she was hoping it would be. I mean, it's a sad moment. It's a really sad moment, but it's also a scary moment because things totally flip with her personality, and she's no longer this demure, nice girl who's very innocent. She's become something else, and it's like instead of having, you know, a little bit of menstrual blood, she's covered in blood at this point, and that little bit of telekinesis that comes out, and anger and rage and disappointment that comes out earlier when she's having her period the in the oh my gosh, in the shower. My apologies. It's taken to the nth degree because it's so much more blood, like a visual representation that it's blown to much larger proportions. And while it was a little bit of blood in the shower, it is a huge amount of blood on the stage in the gym. And that goes from a small bit of telekinesis to a huge display of her telekinesis. Carrie's mother telling her story is disturbing. The full story of what happened and why she feels about Carrie the way she does. And it's then that you realize she sees Carrie as the personification of sin because of how she was conceived. She even says that she should have given her to God, is what she says, when she was born. She literally tells her that she felt like she should have killed her, which leads to her then trying to kill her. She stabs her. She tries to kill her at that point. And what worse relationship with your parent than them wanting you dead and then trying to kill you? I mean, I can't imagine living with a parent who's hated your existence the entire time. And that's what you realize has been going on this entire time, is she's been hating her existence. But it's also this degree of she was projecting onto her all the mistakes she felt like she made, the sins that she made as well, and just feeling like because she was born of sin, that she would be sinning. And that's what was driving her crazy this whole time, to be a terrible parent. Carrie nails her mother with a lot of sharp objects, and you need to note that she dies in a position with the same wounds and in the same position as the Jesus statue that they are constantly praying to in the film in their house. Note that. Very interesting. And they show that then after they show her kind of like pinned up in the in, I guess it's like the walkway between like the dining room and the kitchen. It's what it looked like. Everyone has their breaking point, and when it happens with Carrie, it manifests as deadly kinetic powers that literally symbolize the abuse and anger she's endured bursting forth from her body. And this makes the situation truly a karmic one. It, like I said, it's hyperbole in this film. Like, everything gets blown out of proportion. Where when we're watching films, people who do terrible things, we want to see them get theirs. This is to the nth degree. It's to a crazy level because they get killed. There are lots of great looking shots with a person in the foreground and one like to the side and in the back. A lot of shots like that. That's a very De Palma thing. De Palma really, really liked to do shots like that, and it shows up numerous times. It looks great. I really enjoy that. This is obviously an exaggerated example, but it points to how how parents force religion upon their children when they're captives within the house. I mean, you have to consider that. I know it's not necessarily a main point of the film, but it does bring to mind that, when a kid is living at home, religion is usually forced upon them. They don't get a choice. They're usually not shown, well, there's this religion and this religion and this religion and this religion. What do you think? This is our religion as a family, and you're going to learn it, and this is how you need to live your life. So it really does kind of bring up that issue of severe indoctrination. Like I said, it does it to a very ridiculous level, obviously, in this film, but it makes you think about that. Or at least it does for me. It also points out how children can't escape abuse when it's at the home. There is potential for children to be able to escape abuse when they're at school if the right people get involved, but it's way harder when it's in the home because there's just this kind of assumption that kids are safe at home, and it's a lot harder to get that level of intervention when something is going wrong, when kids are being abused. in the home. So this movie really does kind of drive that home once again in a very over the top way, but it drives it home for sure. And the last thing I did want to say is that this film probably had a lot of impact when it came out. It has even more impact, in my opinion, in a post Columbine world. I'm saying that from my personal perspective because I remember when that whole situation went down. And watching this film, I thought that, it made me think about those types of things because it's literally a situation where a kid is being picked on at school and they don't solve it in a good way. They go way over the top and they act out violently. And that's what happened in the Columbine situation. So, and has happened so many times since. Ugh. Sorry, it's a real downer. My apologies. So, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I can't do anything other than give this a 5-star rating. I mean, if this was a film that was made exactly as it is and looks exactly as it is and everything, if it was made very recently, I might give it like a 4.5 or something, but it's got to be 5 because considering that it was 1976, holy crap, this is a masterpiece of major achievement. De Palma really did it. I mean, and Stephen King and Lawrence Cohen. I mean, come on, great team, and all the acting was really good too. Phenomenal film. Glad I finally got around to it, and it's one of those very rare instances where there was hype around a film, and I liked it more than the hype. Like usually, when there's hype around a film like this, I watch it and I'm either like, I didn't like it as much as the hype, or oh, I see why there's hype, this amount of hype. But with this one, I liked it even more than the hype. Like, it's crazy. So great film. But I'd love to hear other people's opinions on this one. Go ahead and put it in the comments. What do you think about Carrie? Love it, hate it, in between. I am down to hear all opinions. If you hated it, please tell me why. That is fine. Because I need to consider everyone's point of view. I really enjoy that mental exercise, basically. Do me a quick favor, though. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. If you have already, thank you. If you haven't, I will thank you if you do. It's your way to keep me motivated. It's your way to pay me back if you like any video I've ever done like this one or anything. Yeah, it's quick, it's painless, it costs you $0, and it literally keeps me motivated. Also, if you could hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, and you can check them out as soon as possible, that would be cool. But regardless, I thank you for taking your time to check this review out. And until next time, keep it brutal.